Hey guys, Marcin here, bringing another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video. And so today, as we draw very close to the end of 2023, I wanted to take a little look back at the units that have released over this year and talk about, the releases in general, which ones we thought were good, which ones we thought were bad, and then kind of summarize it all at the end. I'm going to keep tabs as we go. Of which ones, I guess we'll use the good old L and W, right? W or L for this release. Now, we're going to go through, I wanted to split this into separate parts because I feel like this video could end up being super long if we go over every single unit released during this year. So we're going to start off with Dokkan Fest exclusives. So this will be TURs and LRs, basically any unit that is available with red coins after release, right? Or is on a banner that gives you red coins when you summon, right? So anything that is a Dokkan Fest exclusive, whether it is a TUR or an LR, that was released in 2023, we will be going through on this list, say a little bit about them, what I think about them, and then of course talk a little bit about what the general consensus seems to be from the community. And obviously we can kind of see with a bit of hindsight for the ones that were a bit earlier on in the year, how well they did in fact go on to age. So what I'll do is, although it's very basic, like rather than try and give them a score out of 10 or anything like that, we're just going to give them a W or an L in terms of what the general consensus from the community was. So for example, if there's a unit that you really like, but I say, oh, this one's an L, you might not disagree, you might not agree personally, but that's generally what I've seen, from the community, on Twitter, from people in my comment section, and obviously if they're units that are on global already, my experience with those units. But we are going to go by the JP timeline because, that's the one that's ahead. Global's going to sync up to that eventually, so we're going to go by the 2023 timeline, which means there are a couple of units towards the end of this list who are not out on global yet, but obviously we will be getting those in the coming months. So this is the Dokkan Fest exclusives for 2023. Were they good? Were they bad? How do they stack up at the very end? So let us go ahead and jump right in with the first Dokkan Fest exclusives that get released for the year are the anniversary LRs. So obviously we have the physical Boo duo and the STR GT duo as well. So these guys, usually when it comes to the anniversary units come out and they are generally considered by pretty much everybody, I guess, to be the new best units in the game. And I believe that was the case with these units as well, right? So the Super Saiyan 3 Goku and Super Saiyan 2 Vegeta, as well as the base form Goku and Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta. Obviously, there were some people not particularly happy with the choice. For example, especially this one, with it being a base GT Goku and then like another Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta. But good for GT to get some buffs. This unit definitely aged better outside of the, anniversary than the Boo duo, although it was pretty evident very early on, right? The Boo duo, as good as they are, and potentially even could be considered underrated by some at this point now, with the fact that they only stack raw defense, you could kind of see, like, as content starts to get more difficult, it would become a bit more difficult for them. And the Dismal Future Red Zone definitely showed that, right? Like, these guys will absolutely get destroyed by a super attack, even if you are 3 or 4 turns in and they've stacked up a decent amount of defense. Obviously, these guys build up damage reduction, and their standby giving them a revive is obviously very useful as well. Has come in clutch many times for saving runs, whilst obviously at the same time doing a ton of damage because it drops the Spirit Bomb as well. So these two, I think we can say we definitely started off the year with 2 Ws. Then we go into the first Dokkan Fest released after the anniversary, and that was the STR Android 17 and Hellfighter 17 that fuse into Super 17, right? Did I say Super 17 already? Android 17 and Hellfighter 17 that fuse into Super 17, right? Now, this was a bitter one for me because you guys know I'm a Super 17 fan. I had a bunch of people tagging me in Twitter and stuff when this guy got shown up, like teased, when the animations came out and all that kind of stuff. I did an animation reaction video, which I don't always do for like new animations for units. I was very excited. And then, of course, we saw the details and then we got to use them in game. And I know this unit has his defenders. I know, like, I mean, every unit does, let's be honest, even if sometimes it's just for memes. This guy's not good and has not aged well either, unfortunately, because villains seem to always suffer from the same thing. And we're going to see this as a recurring theme for a lot of the units throughout this breakdown, I suspect. But we don't get enough content that is versus super type enemies, yet they keep giving villain characters passives or abilities or, you know, intro restrictions, you know who we're going to be talking about for that one, that require them to have superclass enemies, but then they don't release any like relevant difficult content where you fight superclass enemies. So like these guys can be decent in their best case scenario, but they take multiple turns to get going. Their fusion can only be activated with an HP restriction and a turn restriction. So a lot of the time it's very difficult to even get Super 17 to come out. And then once he does come out, he has to build up. So he's very similar to, people were comparing him to the STR Goku and Gohan from last year's Worldwide Download Celebration, Golden Week, where if he just started as Super 17, he'd actually be really good, right? Turn 1, get him hit a bunch of times, get him built up. He would be super good. However, you have to jump through a bunch of hoops to get him out, and then you still have to build him up after that, which is really annoying, especially in the current climate of content that starts off very hard straight away. You just can pretty much never see this unit's full potential, so he is an L, and of course, being a villain character, this will start to see a recurring theme, which is pretty disappointing. There's a couple of standouts, but yeah, unfortunately, the first villain release of the year and the first release after the anniversary being an L, a little bit disappointing. However, after this, we moved into the Saiyan Day celebration, where we saw the release of Physical God Goku. Now, Physical God Goku absolutely goes down in the books as a W, still can be considered one of the best TURs in the game right now. When he released, I feel like hands down he was the best TUR in the game. Very, very good. A unit that people have been waiting for a long time. Like, we had God Gokus in the game, but we didn't have a Dokkan Fest. He got the intro with the ritual. He got the active skill with the I will not let you destroy my world dub, which, especially for global fans or people who just like the English dub in general, very much looking forward to this release. And we absolutely got what we wanted when it came to this guy. Still relevant now, on a ton of categories, really, really good leader. He's just such a useful unit to have in your box because you can build so many teams with him. He is an absolutely fantastic unit and just an all-around W release. I feel like I don't really need to say much more about him. He was a W. He came out on both versions at the same time as well, so big W for global players. Let us just hope that this year's Saiyan Day, which of course is only now, what, like 3 months away, will be as impactful as God Goku was. So we'll move straight on. The next release after God Goku was Kale. Now, when it comes to Kale, this is the one where it becomes a little bit more difficult when using something as basic as, like, you know, W or L release, because Kale as a unit is very, very good. The problem is, as Dokkan made a habit of doing at oftentimes throughout the year, they released her, and she's super good if you have a Universe 6 ally with her, and she can transform earlier if you have a Caulifla on the team. But then they proceeded to not give us a new good Caulifla, who most people, if you were a betting man, you would say, you know what we'll do? We'll make a really good Caulifla as her side banner unit. But instead, we got an extreme unit. We got Frost with the unit super attack with Frieza, which, I mean, he's still good for her team, but just, yeah, not good. And then we got, like, the LR Kale and Caulifla EZA. I will be doing a separate one of these for LRs, which will include Yellow Coin and Carnival, but we're not going to talk about them too much here. But yeah, so, like, they released a unit that can be really good, but then they didn't really give her the help that she needed in order for her to actually shine. So she's still pretty decent now. I used her on the 21, like, Peppy Gal's team, in a no item run against Sin, which I know Sin isn't the hardest event really anymore, but, like, she can still do really well. The problem is going to be if they wait too long to give us this new meta relevant, like, Caulifla or Kefla or something like that, then she's going to get to the point where she's finally got that ally she needs, but then she is outdated. So This one, I feel like we could probably add like maybe a middle ground, like a mid or a question mark, but then that'll bring in too many arguments about where other units should be. So I think overall we would say L release for her, but only because they did not give her the support that she needed, right? Her part 2 LR was Super Boo, which is not relevant for her at all. So, you know, maybe she'll see some improvement in the future. She's still usable now if you had a partner that was good enough to run with her. But I think the general consensus, even from Kale fans, is that it was a bit of an L release overall because the unit did not get the help that it needed. Good unit, just unfortunately not great. So we are talking about the release in general, I suppose, and not just the unit in a vacuum. So we'll put that under L for now, but we can think about the numbers at the end and see what it would have made a difference, I suppose. So from Kale, we move on to the Golden Week celebration for 2023. So this is where we can put another couple of wins on the board. I mean, I guess for the dual Dokkan Fest, I am counting them like twice, which I think is fair because obviously you could get one be good and one be bad. Of course, this time around, that was not the case. Goku and Piccolo Jr. came out and pretty much unanimously went into contention as the 2 best TURs in the game. There was a lot of discussion when they first came out about which one was better, especially because on JP already had the anniversary units, so Goku having another unit that could get that revival off that was actually on his team under his leader skill, the LRGT duo, was obviously a huge impact on him. Like, as a global player, I definitely didn't feel like he was as good as maybe some of the JP players did. So I kind of always had Piccolo over Goku. And of course, as time has gone on, that seems to be the case. I think most people still put Piccolo over Goku. So nice to see Villains getting a W on the board. Although, funnily enough, one of his best teams is being run with Goku and a bunch of other Earthbred fighters and Piccolos and stuff like that. World Tournament support units, things like that, of that nature. So kind of funny that the first Villain W on the board is for a unit that isn't even necessarily the best when it comes to villain teams. I mean, he has big bad bosses, which you won't get active on those teams with super class allies, but then he has like the Dragon Ball Saga links. He does have Thirst for Conquest, he has Fierce Battle. Like on Zamasu's team, he can be pretty good. So we're not going to try and discount him in any way. We are just going to say that he is a W release for villains, for the board, and very good. And then, of course, Goku, as new units come out that get revives, he's obviously going to be able to stay somewhat relevant for quite some time. So, obviously, for now, he is still considered up in the upper echelons of TURs, with the JP releasing the Piccolo and Gohan, who can get a very, very early revival. He can look very good as well. So, he's still a unit that absolutely can hang in there as long as you get that revival off with another unit, right? So he is still a top tier TUR. So Goku and Piccolo Jr. absolutely were W releases. So we move on to the next release after Golden Week of 2023 was the Physical Turles. Now this is another one very much like Kale that I feel like could fall somewhere in the middle ground, because Turles I think is actually a very good unit, right? When you get him built up, when he's done all of his attacks, he can do some pretty nice attack stats, attack multiple times in one turn, has a little bit of damage reduction, which means he will still get blasted by the biggest boss super attacks. But overall, I do actually like this unit. I feel like maybe he was underrated a little bit. However, I think a lot of that stems from people's disappointment from the fact that he has a really cool intro animation that has a very good ability, which is of course to give extreme class allies 3 key and 18% attack. And of course, if you're running double Turles leads, that means 36%. But it's gated behind a Goku family enemy, or an enemy whose name includes Gohan Kid. Not even just Gohan, because then, you know, not like that creates a whole bunch of other options, but that would be nice. So you basically never get to see his intro, and you never get his support passive, which is very unfortunate. Maybe in the future, again, we'll get some of this content against superclass enemies where we can actually see villains start to shine, but we do not have that in the game yet. So unfortunately, whilst I do think Turles can be very good, he does have his supporters. I think unfortunately, if we look at the grand scheme of things, he has to be entered in as an L release. He got a good Easy A with him with the Great Ape Turles, but they didn't Easy A the LR Turles army, which they absolutely should have. And yeah, his Part 2 LR was a Goku, so not great for his team, even though relevant to the celebration because it's from the same movie, but not really relevant for Turles himself. So again, as much as I like this unit, I had fun using him. Like, I wish, you know, we could get some more opportunities so I can use him some more. He just, unfortunately, is not that great. Could have been done a little bit better, maybe given that little bit more support with the right, you know, Easy A, Part 2 LR, that kind of thing. But unfortunately, overall, I feel like the general consensus is that Turles was an L release. Because, like, he got the same sort of treatment that Ginyu got, right? Where he got 2 side banner units tailor-made for being on his team. But when Ginyu came out, people were just straight up saying, okay, he might be the best TUR in the game. But no one was saying that for Turles, right? So, unfortunately, another disappointment for villains. So that is an L on the board for our boy Turles. So then we go on to the next release being the Tanabata for JP. So the LR Full Power Super Saiyan 4 Goku. This was a W release. He is very, very good. At the time of his release on JP, he dominated all the content in the game, including the current hardest event, which was, of course, the Omega event that came out at the same time. I mean, technically, the LR Omega came out, what, a week or 2 after him, and the Omega stage came out with him. And this Goku absolutely dominates that stage because he wants an event where he can build up at the beginning. And then, of course, the Dismal Future Red Zone came out, and that kind of aged him very quickly. He can still be good in there. You just have to be really careful with him on the first turn. So, unfortunately, that did sour a lot of global players' opinions on him because, of course, on global, he released after the Dismal Future Red Zone. So, pulling the brand new Dokkan Fest LR, taking him into the current hardest event, and then him getting immediately killed in slot 1 on the first turn is pretty disappointing for a unit who's designed to be a slot 1 unit, right? So this guy, very, very good, very cool. Everything about him aesthetically I really like. I do love Super Saiyan 4. The animations are great. Like, it's all very good. He's a very good card. He's starting to show age a little bit, but I mean, the Dismal Future Red Zone, we don't know how much of a one-off that kind of stage design could be. Like, we could get the next big difficult event come out because we don't know what the new, the later stages of the new Red Zone coming out on JP at the moment, the 2nd edition movie bosses one. The final stage could be a stage where the final boss hits even harder than Fusion Zamasu, but the first stage isn't particularly hard hitting, and then units like this Goku will be able to shine again. So I guess we kind of have to wait and see. But overall, Goku was a W release. The next release after LR Full Power Super Saiyan 4 Goku was Super Trunks. So Super Trunks, obviously the target of a lot of memes at the moment because he is the next Dokkan Fest coming to global, and people are generally not particularly excited for this guy. He is a unit that, whilst being in the base, like the Super Saiyan Trunks, is not particularly good. You have to build the team around him in order to just only get a chance to guard. So he absolutely can fraud you out in some of these difficult events, but it's difficult because the flip side is when he becomes Super Trunks, he's really, really good. And I actually did like a private server showcase for him when he came out on JP, and I was really impressed with the Super Trunks part of the card. The problem is you then have to get to Super Trunks, right? So I think overall, unfortunately, this was considered an L release by most people. His side banning unit was not very good, although at least was good for his team. He's seen some buffs since then, right? He came out before the worldwide celebration on JP, and we got a new Future Gohan, who's a very powerful Android/Cell Saga category character. So I think this guy, again, maybe in that realm of being a little bit underrated. Not to say that he is good, like the Super Trunks, the Super Saiyan Trunks, full of flaws, can get you killed early on in events. Kind of disappointing, right? But the actual Super Trunks, like once you've transformed, very, very good. So it's kind of difficult with this guy thinking about how exactly to place him overall. But as I said at the beginning, we are kind of going by just like general consensus, and considering all the memes going on global and all the slander that I see on the timeline, Trunks unfortunately is an L release in terms of the schedule the way we're looking at for this video. Like I said at the beginning, I know Trunks has his defenders as well. If you don't agree that any one of the releases was an L for you, obviously that's fine. I'm probably not going to argue that much. You know, I like units that other people don't like sometimes. We're just going by the overall consensus of the community based on the release and how good they were on release, how well they, you know, were supported by their banner units, Part 2 LR, all that kind of stuff. And so unfortunately Trunks does go in the L category. After Trunks, we move on and we get to the worldwide celebration. So we have the AGL, Goku and Vegeta that fuse into Vegito Blue, and we have the Zamasu. Now, the interesting thing is, I feel like there are some people out there that would actually really want me to put the Blue Boys under L, because a lot of people really do not like their fusion condition and the fact that you can obviously get to the turn where their guard runs out and then you can't fuse, and that's really annoying because you want to see Vegito Blue, and if you're not fusing and you've lost your guard, they can then become a defensive liability. But like, this unit is incredibly good. Slot 1 God when it comes to defense, although they are relying on dodge, of course, but slot 1 God, when you do fuse into Vegito goes ham. I've had turns where like he super attacks so many times I lose track, and it's like, this has got to be the last one, right? And then he does another one. Vegito Blue, I think most people again wouldn't argue that Vegito Blue is not absolutely cracked. Most people's disappointment comes with this form of the card, but they are still very good at what they do. Good slot 1 defense. They get basically no attack in slot 1, so their attack stats are really low. There's obviously that meme image of them doing like, I think it was like a 2-point something attack stat, but I mean, they're good for defense. You fuse, Vegito goes crazy. You know, I'm not putting them as an L take, right? So I'm putting them in as a W. And then when it comes to Zamasu, I personally love Fusion Zamasu. He absolutely is a W for me, especially when we consider how villains have been like releasing over the year, or just villains in general. Now Zamasu, he does have his issues. His team wasn't necessarily the best, although of course, you know, you can still beat every event in the game with it. His team does include a lot of superclass characters, or he can be run on teams with like the Blue Boys themselves and everything, but he's just a very good unit. Really nice to see another big strong villain release. So Zamasu and Vegito are both going in the W column for me for releases for 2023. So Vegito Blue and Zamasu, 2 Ws. Nice to have another villain W up on the board with Int Piccolo Jr. So then we move on to, after the worldwide celebration, the first release for JP was the Int Tournament of Power Androids. Now, these guys is very interesting. When they first released and people saw their kit, people thought that they were looking really, really good. And then once we got to see them in game, I think people started to sour on them quite a bit. One of the main things being the fact that a lot of their defensive tech, including their ability to dodge, is on super attack, right? So when we go into a lot of characters now, a lot of releases are held up against like the Fusion Zamasu Red Zone to see how good they are, how well they cope, and units that get any sort of defense or all their defense or defensive abilities on super are generally considered to be pretty bad. And of course, you know, these guys, it would have been nice to have a nice buff for the Android team and stuff like that, but of course there he is in the background. These guys need to have a Goku with them in order to have their full potential, which is great for future, you know, when we get more buffs for it and everything, and the reps of Universe 17 becomes really good, but a little bit disappointing for these guys themselves as a release. And then of course, even though she is on their team, the Part 2 LR was the LR Ribrienne. So I mean, these guys, unfortunately, overall, the general consensus seems to be that they were an L release, which is a bit of a shame because the potential was certainly there. I liked the choice as well for like a filler Dokkan Fest, having the 17 and 18, but from the Tournament of Power. I thought that was a cool idea, but unfortunately, not super great overall, which is a bit of a shame. Then we move on to the next release on JP, which was Piccolo and Gohan. Now, this one is a tricky one for me to place because I feel like the responses on the timeline were pretty mixed for these guys. And I personally haven't seen a lot out of them myself. They can provide a crazy amount of support. You get the recovery into Gohan and then does an absolutely ridiculous... well, it's a revival, isn't it, right, into Gohan. who then for one turn especially does an absolutely ridiculously high attack stat. It was a moment that a lot of people wanted in Dokkan for a long time. The Piccolo sacrifice, like protecting Gohan, has the really cool animation for the exchange with the OST and everything. So honestly, for this one, I'm really not sure whether I would put him under L or W. We talked about how well this unit can buff other units, how well they juice up like 23rd World Tournament Goku. So I mean, you guys will have to let me know what you think in the comments section, but like, I genuinely don't know whether to put this guy under W or L. So for now, I think this is going to be the only unit that I do this for with the list. We are going to keep him as an unknown until we get to the end, and then we'll add him up and we'll see where we stand and where this guy would tip the scales. But you let me know down below in the comments whether you thought Piccolo and Gohan was a W or an L. Obviously, let me know for all of them, right? And let me know what total you get to when we get to the end. So moving on from them, we got Android 21, and she released on both versions at the same time. I'm putting her down as a W. You guys know I like Android 21 in general, but I think she's really, really good. Super underrated. Her team is kind of fun. A nice mix of units that you can put on there. Side banner unit 21, perfect for her team. Really, really good. I think this unit is great. Even if you're not a huge fan of her personally, I think it's very difficult to justify calling her an L release, right? Like, she's a powerful unit. She's got a lot of good utility, good tech. You know, she can tank any super in the game after transforming and his post super attack. So I think she is a W release. It's a nice surprise to get like the Fighters collab when Fighters got their rollback netcode update at Dokkan Fest 21. Nice surprise that we didn't really see coming, and the fact that it was on both versions at the same time as well was very cool, even though it kind of messes with the schedule a bit more, got people's hopes up a bit more, I think, about what was going on with the sync. But I think we have to call Android 21 a W release. So then we get to the final releases of this year that have just arrived on JP, and that is the Dragon Fist Goku and the Hirudegarn. From everything that I'm seeing so far, these guys are both Ws. Now Goku, I know people are a bit disappointed with the quality of the Dragon Fist animation, but when it comes to how good the unit is in the game, I think both of these guys are contenders for being the best TUR, right? Hirudegarn, once transformed, goes absolutely crazy, can basically have like infinite dodge while putting out like multiple 14 million attack stats. Goku obviously has built-in dodge as well. When you go into the standby, you get a guaranteed scouter that shows you where the super attack is, and then you automatically counter that super attack into the Dragon Fist. So very, very strong units. Goku has built-in dodge and everything as well in his base, so he is good defensively as well. Both of them suffer from, unfortunately, the same thing of being units that against AoEs, whilst they do have that dodge, if they get hit, they will take a lot of damage. But they are both very, very strong. And like I say, they are both top contenders for best TUR. So those were all the releases of 2023. Let us go through and add up the L's and the W's so far and see what we get. So with the tally counted up at the end here, remember we didn't put Gohan and Piccolo on the list because I was kind of undecided. I didn't see enough from the community to know whether they were considered the W or an L release. I think if I had to judge by some of the stuff I've seen, I am leaning more towards L, but I'm not too sure. So without Gohan and Piccolo in the mix, in terms of Dokkan Fests this year, there were 16 releases, because again, we're not including Gohan and Piccolo, so technically there were 17. And we have 11 Ws and 5 Ls. Now again, as I've already said, some of you might disagree on individual ones, whether they were Ws or Ls, but hopefully the totals are going to be roughly similar. So if you think Gohan and Piccolo were an L, it would be 11 and 16. If you think they were 11 and 6, if you think they were a W, it would be 12 and 5. So regardless, that means we still have about a 66% W and 33% L, 2/3 kind of thing. So for an overall release schedule for a year, I mean, is that bad? I don't know. I mean, the important thing is Anniversary, Saiyan Day, Golden Week, Worldwide Download Celebration. All of those made it into the W category. For me, as I said, I know some people may be iffy on the Blue Boys. So those are what are important. And then when it comes to the filler Dokkan Fests, I think that's where the biggest issue is, because the filler Dokkan Fests, if we go through the non-important celebrations, are Super 17, Kale, Turles, Trunks, the androids, Gohan and Piccolo. I guess technically 21, right? And then these guys are New Year's. So all of the filler celebrations, only one of them was widely considered to not be an L. Now, I mean, I guess that kind of, it could be a whole other discussion as to the nature of filler Dokkan Fests and why a lot of the times these are Dokkan Fests that you should just avoid unless they are your absolute favorite characters. And even then, if you want to summon quote unquote smart, you probably should avoid them anyway, because that was the running theme of this list, right? That basically all of the big celebration Dokkan Fest exclusives were generally pretty good or well received, and then all of the filler Dokkan Fest releases, apart from 21, all had major issues or were just generally considered to not be very good. So very interesting. But that was the look back at the Dokkan Fest exclusives of 2023. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Like I said, we ended up with a total of 11 Ws and 5 Ls without putting Gohan and Piccolo on the board. So either 12 and 5 or 11 and 6, which is not terrible overall for a year of Dokkan Fest exclusives. What will the LRs one look like? That will certainly be interesting. That will be Yellow Coin LRs and Carnival LRs, and we will do that one for tomorrow. So let me know all your thoughts down below in the comment section. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out the links down below for the Discord and the merch store, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.